When you think of a hoarder, you probably think of someone who consumes stuff. They have so much stuff, they can't get rid of it, and they feel a panic if you suggest to them that they need to get rid of it. Hoarders will typically continue to pile stuff into their house, so much so that their pathway is limited. It's cumbersome for anybody else, but for them, it becomes a way that they're isolated, they're insulated, they're protected from the outside world. An emotional hoarder does the same thing. An emotional hoarder, though, consumes sad memories, sad happenings. Emotional hoarders basically start the hoarding when something traumatic happens to them, some situation. It can be anything like a tornado, a storm. It can be past abuse. It can be a very hurtful relationship. Whatever it is, they consume the sorrow and they live in the sorrow. It becomes their insulation from the outside world. They stockpile it. They cannot move through it. And part of the reason they can't move through it is because it becomes a vicious cycle, an addiction, if you will. Basically, the more you keep yourself buffered from moving through pain and grief and sadness, the more likely you will be stuck in that and you'll push others away. And guess what happens? If you push others away long enough, they eventually will stay away. So that becomes a vicious cycle. Then that adds to the trauma or the sadness that you're not able to move past. So you've created a reality within this that is actually true, and that feeds the addiction even more. Secondly, it can be a defense mechanism. Remember, our defense mechanisms basically protect us. If you were abused as a child, then you may have stockpiled the sadness. You may have consumed it. It may become your creation, your livelihood. What the defense mechanism is meant to do is temporary. But if you continue to feel this sorrow, sadness, you begin feeling like these emotions are despicable. You disown them. And so, in other words, you can't move past them. You can't allow yourself to feel them and move past them because they consume you. And you're unsure of, if you do tell someone about them, that maybe they would reject you or they would think you were weird. And so once again, because of a defense mechanism, you're stuck in this and you continue in it. Lastly, you cannot change because basically you've made a life of this. People live like this for years. They live with so much grief, sorrow, pain, revenge, just feelings that nobody loved them, nobody cared, everybody was against them. And if you carry that, that becomes your livelihood. You cannot imagine what life would be like if you walked away from that. So once again, because you've lived that way so long, you have to be brave to trust somebody to get out. How do you get out? Well, the first thing is you have to be aware of it. You have to see the cycle, what you've created as your reality. Secondly, you need to trust someone, whether it's someone who reached out to you in the past, a family member, a good friend, whoever that person is. It's important to put your trust and faith in them and just start a dialogue. Lastly, if no one has reached out to you, if you feel like there's no possible way you could talk to anyone in your surrounding, then it's important that you get help with a mental health provider. Many places provide someone online so you can stay in the safety of your own home and talk to someone. You can move past this. You don't have to live in the sorrow. Yes, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it begins with you seeking it and making the first step forward.